It's a massive amount of data. Now, obviously, some customers are getting a lot more than others, but if you think about it in those terms, there's a lot of untapped information about how people interact with your applications, what, where, and when within that data stream. And, a lot of folks aren't really tapping into it, and we're excited to kind of set them up to do it. These techniques still save you a lot of time by narrowing things down, right? So talking to people or, taking a synthetic data approach, all these things are really meant to shorten that time span. And to your point, you can get results really quick, but you won't get definitive results very quickly.
Welcome to UX Stories. I'm your host, Lihong Hicken. I've spent my career obsessed with how we understand what users actually think. When Chris and I helped scale user testing from zero to IPO, we thought we had it figured out. But AI has changed everything. The speed of building is now 10 times faster than the speed of listening. So Chris and I built Bayset. We want to use Vibe user testing to match the speed of Vibe coding. I'm here to talk to visionary leaders who want to deliver great experience to their customers. So my guest today is Aaron Montana, Head of Experimentation and Product Analytics at LaunchDarkly. Aaron had a deep engineering experience from IBM and Accenture, and today he is at the center of ship and sea culture, and he helps the world's biggest brand master the art of the A/B testing and feature management. So Aaron, I'm an obsessed learner of people, and you spent your career at the intersection of the code and the metric. So in a world of we can ship a switch and see data in seconds, what is the one human behavior that a dashboard can never fully explain? Of course, you can fully explain who you are as a human first too.
Sure. Yeah. Well, pleasure to be here. I worked as an engineer for a long time. And as I began to kind of shift my career into something that was much more focused on the data and the learning that we get from what people were actually doing with the kinds of applications that I built in the past, I became really interested in what it is that makes people pursue that. And I think the dashboard, the question to your question about like, what is it that the dashboard can't replicate? And it's human curiosity. I think that we're inherently curious as humans, but sometimes the effort it takes to kind of execute on that is actually what keeps us from learning. So, what I found was that, and this is why I kind of love the role that I have now, experimentation, for example, A/B testing and online experimentation, which is where I've spent a lot of my focus, it was less to do with the tools and a lot more to do with the people and giving them a place to like be curious and kind of remove the roadblocks and the friction that it takes to run tests and learn things.
Interesting. Tell me a little bit about Darkly. Like who is your target customer and how are they benefiting from your tool to get? I know a lot of A/B testing is almost like a product marketing or marketing kind of concept. Is that like that's your target audience, or is it mostly e-commerce using your tools? How do they use your data to benefit from from your tool?
Yeah, this is a really good question. So LaunchDarkly is fundamentally a feature management platform for
Mm-hmm.
engineers. And that was our target audience for nearly a decade. But what we learned was that the foundation of feature management becomes the best foundation for experimentation. Because what we're doing is we're in the code path to allow people to choose different pathways in real time. And this is the best place to do experimentation. And I think to your point, commercially, most of the tools out there for experimentation, A/B testing, and even along the lines of what we would say like web analytics have really been focused on marketing personas and really specific roles around advertising and things like that, creatives. But a lot of that work goes back to the developers. And when you sort of put the tools in their hands to scale experimentation, you can reach a much bigger scale than you ever could by kind of leaving yourself only within one area. And the things that engineers want to learn and product managers want to learn is really interesting, actually. And so, yeah, that's actually been really exciting part of what we've been exploring as we kind of grow the experimentation tool at LaunchDarkly is, how do we bridge the gap between our classic persona, which is an engineer's manager, maybe a CTO even, and the other folks who are highly involved in actually doing user research and understanding user behavior? Because there's a role for each of them in these really large scale experimentation programs, but there wasn't always commercially available tools to do it. A lot of these things were kind of hand built tooling. You have folks like Microsoft or Netflix who've spent decades building these tools in house that are kind of invisible to everybody else, outside of white papers and like cool conference talks. But when you can like make a more general tool that any development team could use, the world is your oyster as far as what kind of tests can you run, where can you experiment, where can you learn about things.
That's awesome. So you basically develop a tool to use quantitative data to decide which features should we build, which features should we not build. Is that kind of like that?
Yeah, that's absolutely right. And if you sort of follow, best practices and patterns around development, you're actually setting yourself up for a really powerful and large experimentation program. One of the things that I tell people about that I think may not, be obvious on the face of it is that we have 6,000 customers at LaunchDarkly, over 6,000 now. And each of those customers uses our SDKs in their code. And, they're working for product managers, they're working directly with marketing teams, but the marketing teams and product managers and folks may not understand that these SDKs generate a lot of information that's really interesting data that is the basis for doing all kinds of experiments. Each time a user evaluates a feature flag because they're using your application, that evaluation is an analytical event that gets sent back to LaunchDarkly. We actually do 57 trillion.
Wow.
It's a massive amount of data. Now, obviously, some customers are getting a lot more than others, but if you think about it in those terms, there's a lot of untapped information about how people interact with your applications, what, where, and when within that data stream. And, a lot of folks aren't really tapping into it, and we're excited to kind of set them up to do it.
Interesting. I think about this traditionally when engineering and product team decide what feature to build. They apply a lot of qualitative research by, setting up calls with existing customers and interview them and understand what they want and a lot of interviews. And then maybe they will set up a prototype and ask them for feedbacks and then they build it. And your approach is more quantitative side and you're saying you did you already build a feature or not building it? Just like put feature flag there, pretending it's already built, and then based on what they do to indicate they have an interest on this feature flag. It's like, based on their intent of their action to infer that maybe they have the interest in that.
That's absolutely right. And I think the interesting thing about that too is it actually makes the qualitative research even more important in a lot of ways, because we're going to end up putting in the effort to build at least the first version, real version of this feature. And so it should be a valuable feature. But the flip side of that is we now have a very solid way to experiment and really understand the effect of that, which means that you may end up turning that feature off. And so you should be pretty sure that it's going to be good, but you also have risk mitigation involved and you have the tools kind of, we're putting the tools in your hands to understand what the real outcome of what you did was. I think the tough part could be the psychological part, which is, hey, you may have built something that is not doing what you intended it to do. Yeah. And you have to coach people into understanding that, it's not a loss. You've learned something, you're going to pivot. But, that's probably the tough part. We're putting all the tools in your hands. Like a lot of it comes down to, coaching them around the mentality of it.
Yeah, totally. So, Aaron, you are a very unique person to talk about this topic because you have a lot of engineering logic in this, and you actually have experience working for Accenture, which is the very well-known agency. And I work with Zika Trail Consultancy. They're very data-driven, qualitative, quantitative, combined expertise in this. And now you're working, LaunchDarkly, also very quant. So a lot of people are thinking, sure, we need qualitative and quantitative. What is a sequence? So let's say I have some hypothesis that maybe customer want these features. What is the sequence for me to start designing these studies? Do I need to first talk to the customers, come up with the prototypes, or do I start needing to put something, a feature flag, and then if I have some bite, then I'll do interview. Like, what is the sequence? Where do I start? And walk me through how I design this.
Oh man, I wish that answer was easier. I'll tell you, the one thing I like to say is that qualitative research is very good at finding and identifying problems, which are incredibly
Okay.
valuable, but it's
Okay.
not very good at solving those problems, right?
Mm.
You really surface those problems, and then now you can sort of try to understand potential solutions around them. And then you should really test those to understand if what you thought was true is actually true and not just a feeling. The other side of that, though, like where do we really start? And I will put on my engineering hat now, is we start with best practices around engineering. If we have built in the best practices for how we release and deploy code, how we organize ourselves to act on research that we get, then the friction in from idea to problem identification to actually running a test because we developed something, the friction is much less if we have those things in place. So, a lot of my work involves going to large engineering teams and discussing with them the value of experimentation, not because they're going to solely run experiments, but because I want them to understand why it is that they should organize themselves and adopt some practices that they probably aren't doing now, but maybe recognize are good, but what the real value that's going to bring to the organization is, and why they should be enthusiastic to do it instead of a little hesitant. And a lot of that revolves around teaching them the kind of things that folks in the UX world have known for a long time. Users don't do exactly what they say they're going to do. And the value of the work that we do is much easier to defend when we can sort of measure it and present it in a really scientific way.
Okay, that's very good. So you refrain really well. Qualitative is very good at finding the problem of, potentially smoke it out what problem could be, but
Yeah.
solution wise, you kind of have to quantitatively design. But also, I think like, we are at user testing world. When you're trying to fix a problem or come up with a solution, how do you know if your solution is going to work? And that's why doing prototype testing to make sure that the new solution you deploy for the fix is actually going to work. Otherwise, you're going to deploy something blindly. How do you even know? You could turn on the analytic, and then a few months later, it's like, oh, it doesn't work. You had to kill it. Sure, you achieve the result, but you had to create so many bad experience to reach the statistic number to know that doesn't work, right?
Yeah, oh, exactly, exactly. Or, another kind of lens on this, because I talk to a lot of teams that are high velocity teams. They put out a lot of features in a short amount of time.
Mm,
Hey,
yes.
I especially our mature customers who've been using our platform for a long time may have moved to daily releases. They may release code to their production instance multiple
Yes.
times a day. And what I like to tell them is, you're running experiments right now. You're just not actually measuring the outcomes as an experiment. You're just doing the risky part. You're not getting the benefit of measuring them in parallel and understanding what the real outcome was.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. Well, I guess, this is, I thought we're going to coming into a debate, Aaron, about a quantitative debate with qualitative, but this is actually totally different. You are actually very well-rounded and best practice on this because I've seen a lot of people only coming in and only doing quantitative. And they told me like, the analytic data is the new usability testing.
I don't, yeah, I'm not too surprised. I talked to a lot of data science teams also, and I truly believe that if you've not done some of the qualitative research, I suspect you don't 100% understand what the values you see in your dashboard pop up really mean. Data always is open to interpretation. And if you do the research alongside doing the experimentation and doing the measurement, then you are much better suited to actually understand what it is that what it is that you're gathering and counting, essentially. And I just think that's really important. So I'm always arm in arm with the qualitative
For
folks.
the data side.
Really
Well, I
important.
guess there's a difficulty in today's product building world is that the quantitative data is fast. You turn it on, it's fast, and product building is fast. Vibe coding, everything is fast, but the qualitative data gathering is slow. And I've talked to a lot of people. They said everyone said nothing beats talking to people in the room, which sure is good, but scheduling 20 calls could take forever. Reaching out to the right people, getting access to the right people, and then time are the two killers that block people getting the qualitative insight, right?
Yeah.
And then before we have usertesting.com, which you can get your right audience and the same day delivery. That's good, but that company has been acquired by private equity firm along with three of their competitors, right?
Yeah.
So unless you have a big wallet, that's becoming expensive. That becomes, a no-no for small to medium companies. So now the cost of qualitative research is becoming expensive. And then they were like, well, if I guess it wrong, I'm just going to rip it apart and build it again.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because to your point, it is expensive. I mean, anything, that requires people time becomes expensive and difficult, which is also another expense. And I do think the cost of building things and iterating on things is decreasing over time, especially with AI and, the way that we can do code generation now. I don't think it replaces the value of getting in front of people and talking to them. I do think there's probably a place for synthetic data in the future. I think it's very promising, although I haven't seen it really in practice personally yet at a large scale. I think at a small scale, it seems to be very cool.
Yeah.
On the other hand, these techniques still save you a lot of time by narrowing things down, right? So talking to people or, taking a synthetic data approach, all these things are really meant to shorten that time span. And to your point, you can get results really quick, but you won't get definitive results very quickly. And so
Yeah.
you want to narrow that down as soon as you can before you get into the like live data and really deploying
Totally.
costs.
So I want to ask you a question, Aaron. So at the user testing phase, depending on where phase are, you test different things, right? So on a later stage, maybe you ask, is this feature working? Is this button working, right? On those, I think maybe you be able to do the synthetic data, the synthetic panel. But on the early stage of like, do we solve the problem for you? Are we developing the right product for you? Like these product market fit questions, I don't think the synthetic panel or AI is gonna answer the right question. They're trying to police you, right? I think that is too risky not to use a human tester.
I agree. I agree with that, and I'm open to being proven wrong. As I see it right now, we're still selling to humans, right? Maybe you're selling an
Right.
idea, maybe you're selling a product, maybe you're selling a membership, but realistically, we want a human to do a thing, and asking a machine to do it will only take us so far. Now, there's another side to this, which is, do we design and test things that are specific for machines? And this is starting to come up as a topic.
Oh, that's what I'm seeing too. Like, yeah, it's like because if machine do things for you, do you do testing for machines?
Yeah, well, yes, we do. And this is becoming like a bigger topic. There's another person within our company who specifically heads our AI initiative, and we're in frequent conversation now because a lot of what we're thinking about is who's going to run experiments? What if it's also machines? And who's the audience for those? What if those are also machines? What if you have machines running experiments for other machines? There's a usability to the way that other agents want to interact with your data. And it's not much different than what we were thinking about, 10 years ago with humans. And so it's in its infancy, but this is an important part of our testing programs going forward. 50% of our audience is humans, 50% of it is a chat agent doing shopping for somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's why I said that if our ecosystem is a garden, technology is a rain, it will create new jobs. Because then our usability testing could be testing for human, for bots, human and bot ecosystem, and then legacy work coexistence, legacy work and human bot, everything that you have to test for all this ecosystem to work together. It's like so much more job created.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my goodness. Let's do a quick wrap up here. All right. Thank you for showing us the wonderful human side between the data. And for those who are listening, if you're ready to start vibe testing behind at the speed of you code, visit us at theysaid.io. And this is Lihong Hicken and US Stories. See you later, Aaron.
See you later. Thank you.